One of the things that I do a lot in PowerPoint is I try and use diagrams, I try and use visuals and illustrations. And there are a lot of tools in PowerPoint that give us that capability. Today's agenda: why PowerPoint? Why would you use PowerPoint instead of something else that could do something on your computer? Why diagrams? We'll talk a little bit about the ribbon and insert, and I'll show you how those things work and a lot of the tools that are available as well in PowerPoint. PowerPoint is a tool you use when you want to present something. You want to present an idea, a concept, a thought, and you are sharing it with someone and you want to communicate it to them. Replace slide presentations. For a long time, one of my jobs was working for a company called the 3M Corporation. And my job was to go out and sell overhead projectors and transparency film to corporations and teach them how to give more effective presentations. We did a really good job. We got a lot of people using overhead projectors and transparency film. And of course, 3M made money on the transparency film. 3M is a company that is very good at attaching two pieces of things together. When you look at Scotch tape, when you look at sandpaper, when you look at a lot of their technologies, it's something on top of something else that's bonded together. And they're really good at doing that. So we figured out how to take a piece of clear plastic and make it sensitive to carbon ink. And we could put a piece of paper in between it, a sheet, send it through a machine called the thermofax machine, and get a overhead transparency film. So thermofax machines, if you know what they are, you're dating yourself like me. But we would teach people how to present things. Okay, so it could be a group, it could be a club, it could be an organization. When you want to communicate something, and as software took over, it replaced transparency film, but the concept of presenting things to a person or a group. And you can present things to a people. You can use PowerPoint on iPads, on tablets, on your phone to show something to people and go through the slides one at a time. You don't have to have a group to communicate with PowerPoint. Now, the productivity tools are like Word. You could write a document, people could read something. But when you're using PowerPoint, you're generally speaking or communicating something to somebody. And when you want to present something, that's why you choose PowerPoint. It's about choosing the right tool for the task. Anybody have any other suggestions for why you might want to use PowerPoint? Some other reasons to look at using PowerPoint are some things that might be beneficial for you when you're looking at different types of activities. So it's an industry standard. It's used in commercial organizations, government. So there's a lot of incompatibility. It could be referred to as a de facto standard, but it's not the only one. And I'm going to give you some alternatives. And there's some great things. You can actually import and export into a lot of different applications to and from PowerPoint. So, for example, Apple's Keynote, which is Apple's presentation application, will import and export to PowerPoint. And Google Slides will import and export to PowerPoint, but Google Slides and Apple Keynote don't import and export to each other. So PowerPoint is this big, common denominator that's out there. It syncs with OneDrive. So if you're using PowerPoint and you're using the Microsoft 365 version or the free web version, your PowerPoint presentations are automatically synced with OneDrive if you turn on the auto save function when you want to save a PowerPoint presentation. Your tool includes AI Designer when you got Microsoft 365. Yeah, Joe, thanks for raising your hand. Got a question or a comment?
If you have a PowerPoint presentation and you want to load it into, say, something like Google Slides or Apple, whatever they have, or something, do you have to do anything special, or can you just open it from inside of the program? In other words, if you're in Google Slides and there's a PowerPoint file that you want, can you access that without having to change it in any way or save it in a different way?
You don't have to save your PowerPoint in a different format in order for Google Slides to open it. When you open a PowerPoint presentation in Google Drive, it will convert it to Google Slides automatically or not. But in Google Docs, you can import a PowerPoint presentation into a Google Slide presentation without changing anything about the PowerPoint. So there's nothing in PowerPoint. You have to Google Docs and Apple Pages and a lot of other tools that recognize the PowerPoint slide format, the .pptx file type. So you don't have to change anything to get it in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, the other thing is that Microsoft 365, the paid version, includes an AI designer tool that designs slides. And there's also an image library available with Microsoft 365. The paid version has an extensive image library to use. So there's a lot of tools and resources to help create a slide. This slide that you're looking at right now, Other Reasons, was actually created from a list of bullets. I had a bulleted list of industry standard, syncs with OneDrive, Microsoft AI Designer, image library, and import export. And I had some text in here and the logo for 365. But I used the designer tool and it created these icons automatically and put the text underneath them. So the designer tool is one of the tools we're going to look at that can save you a lot of time in designing and working with slides. There are alternatives. Some of you may be more familiar with Google Slides. I use Apple Keynote sometimes because it's just convenient for using on an iPhone and iPad. Some of people like using Canva, which is a third-party website that has a slide tool. Some people like using OpenOffice. There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of alternatives to PowerPoint, just that PowerPoint's got a lot of features and Microsoft keeps on enhancing it all the time. So it's a good one to know how to use, but you don't need to use it. All of these others will give you the idea to create basic slides, and each one has a slightly different emphasis on what it wants to accomplish. And then a couple of weeks, we're going to do a comparison, Apple and Google and Microsoft, and what I call their ecosystem. And I got the word ecosystem from the web. And so Apple has its world of apps and how they work. Microsoft has its world of apps and how they work. And Google has its world of apps and how they work. And they're all really good. It's just a matter of which one meets your needs and which one is the right tool to use. I'm kind of using it as a basis for helping to build a foundations of technology class that I'm doing to help people compare things. Okay, so why diagrams? Well, visuals help communicate. One of the things we did at 3M and one of the things we talked about with communicating is that people learn more, they learn more. It's an easier way to communicate things with visual aids. And text on slides is a visual aid, but illustrations, pictures, videos, diagrams that help people actually help make a better point as well. And there's a lot of science around the purpose of explaining and doing things. There's a lot of things you can do that are really fancy in PowerPoint, but the key thing is to keeping it simple and keeping it so it makes it a good point. The idea about diagrams and just using things like circles and rectangles and triangles is that they can represent things. You can use a block of information to represent a computer. Just type in the word computer in the text. You can show connections between things with diagrams and lines and other things like that. I think I have an example here of what I did when I was talking about messaging and trying to explain better how cellular SMS and MMS messaging works without Wi-Fi when you're just using your cellular carrier. So there's a type of messaging that you use that goes from cell phone number to cell phone number. It's called SMS, but there's also another type of messaging called MMS, which it lets you attach a media file. Okay, so SMS and MMS both go through your cellular carrier, through your phone number. They go through your cellular network, and your cellular network gets it to the other person's phone number. And so SMS is part of your text plan, and MMS is part of your cellular plan. So this was one slide in a series. I made one slide that had both Wi-Fi and internet and other messaging, and I was able to take it and separate things out so that I could say, okay, now what happens if you have Wi-Fi? Well, with SMS and MMS, it doesn't really matter because it's always going through your cellular carrier. And whereas with other types of messaging, there's actually a different path. So this block is just a shape. This block is just a shape. You know, this information is just a shape. And these cell phone icons are actually from the icon library in PowerPoint that I pulled up, as is the cell phone tower. So communicating things with a diagram sometimes makes it a little bit easier. So I don't know how many of you have used diagrams before, but it's a great tool. Anybody else use diagrams on their PowerPoints? So when you're trying to communicate something that's more complex, it really makes a huge difference. So this is just an example of how you can use a diagram, and kind of converting the idea of what you want to communicate into the diagram is probably, I think, the harder part. The actual diagramming for me is actually relatively easy. So let's take a look here and get out of our presentation and go into PowerPoint. Okay, we'll actually go into the PowerPoint slide presentation that I'm using. There's absolutely no need to create a different one. So this is how PowerPoint looks when I'm actually using it in the screen. Let me change something here, move it down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so in PowerPoint, you've got the ability to navigate around through different menus. You've got a home menu, and if you select a menu item on the top here, a tab, you'll change what shows up in what's called the ribbon. Okay, so it is possible to customize the ribbon. You can put some frequent used tasks up here. I've got auto save on, so it's going to be saving any changes I make to my OneDrive. I can go to the home of PowerPoint. I can go back and navigate to different things. I kind of learned that this floppy disk is being taught to elementary school children as a slice of bread. Interesting. You know, those of us that recognize a floppy disk, but they're saying, oh, it looks like a slice of bread. You've got undo, redo. You've got a quick access toolbar if you want to customize it. But this menu, this ribbon, is where most things are in. Now I'm going to just create a new slide here. I'm just going to put my insert bar here with a click of my mouse. And I'm going to click new slide. And if I click on the small drop-down arrow, it gives me the ability to create some different theme, the different styles. I can format one just as bullets or blank, or a title slide, or a title, bullets, and photo. And then we can modify it. So I'll take blank. Okay, so it creates a blank slide for me in the slide area. Now, I don't have anywhere to put any text or shapes or anything like that. It's a blank canvas. So if I wanted to, I can change the layout to bullets, and it'll give me a pre-formatted style. Now, you can see designer already popped up some designs. I don't actually have anything on my slide. So if I want to put something into here to click and add to the title, there we go, and say practice with diagrams. And I enter that. Now, if I open up the designer is going to generate design ideas based on the text I put into the title. So it's picking up keywords. It's actually using a back-end AI tool from Microsoft. So it's thinking, okay, here's some diagrams and some different shapes and themes and approaches. It'll even give you a video suggestion if you want. And if I just want to select one of these, which is what I did on the alternatives, where I had a list of slides of bullets here, I just clicked on designer and it changed it to a design automatically. Okay, so that's one way to get some diagramming very quickly and some different approaches to your slide. And as again, it's going to pick it up from the text and try and identify what's going on here. There, if I want to add, yeah, Joe. Unmute.
Yeah. Okay. On the designer now that's a feature of the 365. It wouldn't be part of like 2019 or 2021 or anything like that. They don't have the designer. I don't recall seeing the designer on there.
Correct. It is part of, you have to have a Microsoft 365 subscription to use designer, although I do not know if it is available on the free Word PowerPoint for the web version or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, but great tool. I mean, and there used to be a formula that said, oh, all of your slides should use the same template, theme, design, things like that. I don't see anything wrong with breaking things up a little bit, having a little bit of change. One of the things that I've been observing a lot about YouTube videos that people make for training is they try to keep the pace changing fairly rapidly. And I've watched television commercials a lot lately, and I've noticed that things don't stay the same on the screen for more than 3 or 4 seconds at a time. Our attention spans are really short. We need that motion. And with slides, there's not a lot of motion. Now, you got me talking, but on the screen itself, this screen has basically stayed the same all the time. Okay, let's go to the area called insert. Well, I want to show you one more thing before we go to insert. On the home tab, you will see the ability to insert pictures, shapes, and text boxes. So you can insert a text box by clicking on text box, go down to your slide and drag with your mouse, click and drag with your mouse, and it'll insert a text box. So we'll call this item 1, okay? And I can hit outside of it, and I've got a text box. Now, it is not formatted other than it being a text box. I can go up and change it with a shape fill here in the ribbon, and I can choose a fill color for that box very quickly. So one way to get blocks of text on your screen very quickly is just use text boxes and use the shape fill, okay? So if I don't want to have a shape fill, I can choose white, any color. I could choose no fill if I want to. Or I can go to something called Quick Styles. Microsoft has a set of default styles for stylizing your text boxes. So if I click on, say, this white on black text, you can see it changed some things on here. It changed the text because it's in black, but it didn't really change the color to accommodate that. So I would have to select the text here, and I can click on select all, and maybe I can figure out the shape fill here for the text fill. The color here might be over here. If I change that to white, there I go. So it's going to change certain things to white. Just have to be careful to work with a color one at a time. I'm going to go with a bright green here, okay? You can change for everything on the slide or just one item at a time. I'm going to go back to black, and we're going to go try a different quick style here to see if there's something that might work a little bit differently. So if you've got black text already, one way to deal with it is to go with a slightly lighter color background and choose things. And these are sometimes gradient backgrounds that are already pre-designed for you. You can modify the fill as much as you want to and use different fill colors. You can use a picture for the background. You can change the gradient. So it really gives you the ability, you can apply textures to the background of a text box. So that's one way to create a shape, is to start with a piece of text and modify it. And you can modify the outline as well if you're interested in creating an outline. So that's one form of creating a shape as a text box. Okay. Another way is to add a shape. Okay, so when you click on shapes, you've got a variety of shapes that are used. Now, PowerPoint will keep track of recently used shapes. I most recently used text box, that's considered shape, but there are lines, arrows, boxes, and so like rectangles, basic shapes, block arrows, equation shapes, flow charts, stars and banners, and callouts, as well as action buttons. So if I wanted to put a navigation button here for something, I can put a navigation, and it can actually be a link button to another slide or another location. PowerPoint has tools that allow you to create quizzes and diagrams from different things. So that's one of the shape navigation. But if I just want to put a rectangle in here, I can click on rectangle. My crosshairs give me the place I start. I can just draw a rectangle and position the rectangle. Okay, now I have the ability to format. You see the ribbon change to shape format. So I can edit it in a variety of ways. I can edit points on the shape. I can apply styles to it if I want to and modify it. I can change the fill if I choose to and make it transparent, or choose a color. I have the ability to change the text fill as well, apply shape, send it forward or backwards. One of the things that Microsoft does, did you see the screen change okay, where it changed it and gave you the layers here? Layers are something that exists in graphics programs where an object sits on a layer and the top layer covers the layer behind it. So this is a click layer. So if I cover this blue box and I cover item 1 here, and I want to show my object layers, this gives me the ability. I can move this layer and drag it behind, and then I have the ability to modify it in different ways and change how it works. I hit the return key accidentally there. Let me reorder that, put it behind, and then change it. There we go. So now item 1 is on top of the box here. So it's another way to create a shape. Grabbing the arrow, the adjuster hands at the end will let you adjust the size of the shape if you want to.
Like, like almost in any program, like in Word, if you like drag a arrow over something, do they really have like invisible layers we don't know about, like this in Photoshop kind of thing? We just don't know it.
Word is not a
Right.
graphical a tool as PowerPoint. Carl and I were talking about creating puzzle diagrams, and that's kind of what prompted me to talk about diagrams in PowerPoint. He was trying to do them in Word, and Word doesn't really let you drag things around on a canvas as though there's no other things in place. Okay, so, but PowerPoint does. PowerPoint lets you grab things and move them around, reposition, and create layers of objects as well. So it gives you much more flexibility from that standpoint. That's why you'd want to choose PowerPoint versus something else. Yeah, EG, go ahead.
Yeah, would you mind showing again where you found the way to see the layers?
Sure. Here's my text layer. I'm going to actually type in some text here and say tech topic, PowerPoint, okay? And get rid of that bullet there. Okay, so when I start adding an object on the shape format menu item here, if you select any shape, you'll see this shape format in the ribbon, and the reorder objects selection is what gives you the ability to see the shape of these. So I will see the layers. I hover my mouse over each one, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. I can click on a layer and move it to the top or move it to the back. I just literally click and drag on a layer, and then I hit the return key, and it brings me back to my slide. So it gives a lot of flexibility. Sure. And how to position things top and bottom. Yeah. Because sometimes they, well, I covered this up. How do I get it back? Type of thing. And reordering objects gives you the ability to do that. Now, if you want to, you can click on an object and then just go to send backward, and it sends it backward one layer. And if we take a look at reorder, it's automatically moved it without me having to open up the reorder layers screen. So that's another way to do things. There's always typically 3 or 4 ways to do the same thing with an application if you want to. Now, if I want to take the blue layer and say, gee, I didn't really mean to do that, I could just go to undo. That undoes the last thing step I did. But undo actually keeps track of a lot of steps. Okay, if I click on the arrow, the disclosure arrow next to undo, you can see all of the steps it's kept track of for me. So one way to do things is try it one way, try it a different way. Just like, getting prescription glasses for those of you that are used to getting an optical exam. So that's just a few simple things you can do with some basic shapes. So if you want to, you can group the shapes together by selecting both of them. And then at the upper right here, there is a group button where you can group objects together. Now it's one object, and I can move it around. I can drag it and move it around as one single object if I want to. If I look at my layers, it'll be a little bit different. Okay, so there's not actually as many layers here as there were before. So I can reorder objects, and you can see now that they're grouped, they're considered one object. So this idea of objects in PowerPoint gives you the ability to create a lot of interesting approaches. And you can align objects too. If I want to duplicate this, for example, I can copy and paste it. I've created a new item here. I'll call it item 2. Okay. And I can align them. So if I just am creating them and I don't really know where I'm doing, I don't worry about alignment until I'm kind of finishing up the slide, because then you can go to the align menu item in the ribbon, click on it, and you can align left, center. So if I want to make sure they were perfectly lined up, I can select them both. So that's to center just the one item, but I can select both items. And then I click on align, I can align center. Well, I'd really like them more to the right. Let me go to the right. So if I align to the right, it'll position it in line where I have the object. So if I take this object, move it over here, then I select both of them and I go to align right. It's going to move them all into the right margin that I created from the first object. So you can line objects up perfectly, horizontally, vertically, and obviously if you didn't like it, you can always undo what you wanted to undo. But PowerPoint gives you a lot of capabilities like this. Now, there are some other things. I'm going to take this text box here and I'm just going to resize it because I don't really want it to take up this much room for the next step we're going to do. And you don't have to resize things at all, but this is a bullet list if I wanted to. I'm going to go to the Insert tab here. The Insert tab opens up an entirely new world of possibilities. you can insert a new slide, obviously, or you can insert a table if you want to, and you can drag and drop the number of rows and columns you want. You can insert pictures from your files, from browsing photos in your Microsoft account, or from stock images. And Microsoft stock images has a lot of photos. They have about a little under 1 million now. You can search them. So if I wanted to find a computer photo here, I get a lot of different photos that I can utilize, and I just have to select on one and I can click it. So I'm not sure why it's giving me keys here, but let's call it a desktop computer. Okay, so there's a nice desktop. I select it, I click insert, and it moves it into my slide. It's an image that I can move. Now you see designer came up with some interesting layouts here of taking these objects and applying different layouts. So again, designer gives you some different features. Okay, so I'm going to make this picture small. I'm going to grab the handles here, move them down. There's also usually a handle at the top or the bottom of an object that lets you rotate it if you're interested in rotating it. So what also exists in stock images are icons. Okay, icons exist. And so here's an icon. I have desktop searched. I'll take search off, but you can see there's lots of icons. So if you're looking for an airplane or an alarm, you can put it an alarm here. And these icons can be resized without affecting their graphic quality. They're called vector images. And again, you see new designer types of features. There's actually more, okay? You can get stickers. So there are stickers if you wanted to apply a sticker, because PowerPoint's used by people in education, in hobbies and clubs, in all types of activities that you might be interested in. In stock images, you can also get illustrations of things. If you're looking for, say, something like a Microsoft or a microscope, I'm sorry, and you want to insert that, you can do that. So you can see how some of these objects are becoming more and more elaborate. You've got a whole variety of things. And there's even things like cartoon people or cutout people. So if you wanted to, illustrate something with a cartoon person with different expressions, you can do that and put people in there to create dialogue, training, other types of information that you might want to. That's stock images. Okay, so you can see our slides getting pretty busy. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to click on the X here on the right navigation, and we go back to insert. There are icons available next to shapes. So if we look at the top here, we've got the shapes. That's the same shape menu we saw before. You can get to icons really, really quickly. That'll pull up the stock icons. They're very, very common to use. Things like navigation icons, button icons, steps, things to illustrate different types of activities. So icons is up here. We're going to have to delete a few things. So I'm going to delete my tech topic here, get rid of that, get rid of this, get rid of this, because I want to show you something called 3D models. Okay, 3D models are literally through three-dimensional models that are already created for us. So if we wanted to find something for a particular topic, they have a whole library of things like electronics. Well, we have some people that know geology here. So I'm going to take a geology icon here, and I'm going to take this picture of the Earth opened up and put it in here. So it's going to insert it. It downloads it from the internet. So it's a little slow right now. There it goes. It's sped up. Okay. So now it's got a 3D model. This is an object that I can grab in the center and I can modify it. I can rotate it, create a different perspective in 3D if I want to. So it's another way to illustrate something if you want to. And so that's another tool that we can use. It could be resized, repositioned, and it gives you the ability to represent objects. They're all pre-designed, pre-formatted. Let's take another one here, see what it looks like. And so you can start to create a lot of different shapes here. If you're trying to illustrate, volcanic eruption, you can change the perspective. And some of these have a little animation with them as well. This is actually a video that exists. So just a tremendous amount of library of tools if you haven't looked at that insert tab and 3D model. I'm going to get rid of my bee. I'm going to get rid of the alarm clock. I'm going to get rid of Microsoft. I need a few other things here. I need some room for something called SmartArt. One of the easiest ways to diagram things is using SmartArt. SmartArt gives you the ability to find predefined layouts for things that you might want to create. And it's SmartArt. Now, when I use this slide here, for example, other reasons, Microsoft Designer technically made these into something called SmartArt. But you can create your own SmartArt directly from this. So you have the ability to create a list. You can represent a list as a bulleted list, but sometimes it's nice to represent a list as separate objects on a screen, or different charts or chevrons, or different ways you might want to illustrate a point or an object. If you've got a process, a set of steps that you want people to go through, you can represent them as a hierarchy, and this automatically inserts the items here. You can edit the text and say, and this is creating the SmartArt text, where we create step 1, and we create step 2, and we create step 3, and you edit the text in the SmartArt, and it gives you the ability to position it, to modify it. You can move these objects around within the SmartArt, but it's predefined, and you can position it so it has all these shapes and diagrams and arrows already positioned for you without the need for you to create it. If you didn't like that format, you can click on something different. It changes the layout on you. If you didn't like that one, you can change it to something entirely different. It keeps the text. It just provides you with different ways of illustrating that information in different ways. And again, this little flyout arrow here is what you use to actually edit the text in the SmartArt. So Microsoft is taking the text you enter here and positioning it in the SmartArt for you. So you have the ability to change it and try different ones out to see which ones you'd like to utilize and find one that works most effectively for you. You can even change it to circles and more complicated diagrams. That, unfortunately, is just one type of SmartArt. If we go to Insert and we look at SmartArt again, there's cycles. How many times do you have to illustrate something that goes in a sequence? How many times? So you can insert a cycle, and you can get some very elaborate steps here that help illustrate a point, so that you don't have to be a diagrammer or an artist of your own. You just have to go to Insert, SmartArt, and find something. Hierarchy, I mean, how many org charts or flow charts or web diagrams or other types of information. Relationships, trying to illustrate relationships be two things, like balance. How do you illustrate something with balance that you might want to deal with? So I'm actually going to eliminate this title, because sometimes there's absolutely no need for a title on a slide at all. So I have the ability to enter the text, and I can create this balance if I want to. There's other types of models as well. So go look at SmartArt. matrices, where you're trying to illustrate things in quadrants, for example, and say, well, upper left, upper right, left, lower right, trying to illustrate points like that. The diagrams are built for you. So you can take some other ones, you can change the text in your diagram, or you can enter the text, I'm sorry. If you enter the text and you want to try how it's going to look in different diagrams, you can just go through these list of options that you have. And the list of options is just really great. If you're trying to represent things that are opposed to each other, you have a whole range. There's a little disclosure arrow down at the bottom of these diagrams that allow you to try all of them out if you're interested. Pyramids, pictures, illustrations, just a tremendous amount that you can do. Is you can change the colors, you can change the way the arrows look. So if I want to apply a different effect to the arrow and modify it a little bit to give it a little different accent or offset or different types of tools, and you can convert a SmartArt to a shape. Now, I will warn you, if you use like Keynote or Google Slides and you have SmartArt in your PowerPoint, it will convert it all to just one shape typically. So that's one of the drawbacks of using SmartArt. If you're thinking, well, I'll create this in PowerPoint. If you don't need to change it, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, Carol.
Just by chance, do you know if any of the SmartArt is for music, like anything to do with music, staffs and chord diagrams or?
SmartArt, no. But there are a lot of icons and shapes that are available that have to do with music. SmartArt was designed around relationships, business concepts. So I can look at stock 3D models, and there are a lot of 3D models on music that are available typically. So see if we can find avatars, Microsoft products, biology, math. So there's a lot of options that I can put in from icons and 3D models. But SmartArt would be a good way of illustrating a step-by-step process is what it's really designed for, more than anything else. There's also charts. If you are a chart person and you want to just input charts, you don't have to go to Excel first to create your chart. You can just insert a chart here with a PowerPoint shape that gives you the ability to create many, many different types of chart formats that you can illustrate. And I haven't tried maps. I'm curious what it does on maps. I haven't done that at all. So we'll see if it does something that we can try. So it's going to create a map. It's created some information, some scratch data here. It actually ties itself to PowerPoint or Excel and gives you the ability to represent map data so that you can create it and use it. So you have to use Bing apparently with using this type of information. So if you want to illustrate a world map with different statistics of people in different countries, some of these things are actually preset already for you. If you ever want to edit the data, you can go to selecting the data or edit a cell. It's linked to an Excel spreadsheet automatically, so you can use that. And you can change the chart type here by going to a different chart. We can go to a simple pie chart, but some of these pie charts look pretty interesting so that you can show them in a variety of different ways and get an amazing type of layout. You can actually drag pieces of a pie apart to illustrate different types of points that you might want to illustrate too. So it's just a matter of what you may want to consider doing. Now, obviously, there are even more things you can insert. If you insert a picture from Microsoft stock images, you can get videos. And let me look for videos here. So here's videos of things that some background, some interesting things. Doesn't like and animals. So this is what the video will look like as you're editing the slide. When you go to play from current slide, it actually plays as part of your presentation. So you don't have to leave your presentation to play video. I don't believe yet you can embed a YouTube video in your presentation, but you can put in an MP4 into your presentation to go beyond just a few things. So sometimes it helps to break it up if you want to. Okay, well, any questions before we go? You think you can use some of these tools in your next PowerPoint presentation for anybody that's using it?
Definitely, Bob. Definitely unbelievable creativity with that PowerPoint. You could spend I think you can't spend a whole day on it because you go nuts, but you could spend an hour or two a day and improve yourself, I think for a couple of weeks, a month, and you could still be improving yourself.
Yeah, just even using the designers just to kind of trigger ideas is great, but there's always something else you can add to it, and just try something a little bit different to represent something and communicating a point. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about it's a little off topic, I guess. The bullet points. I like to use pictures for bullet points. The problem is when you create the bullet point, it seems like the picture bullet point is too small for the text. I mean, if I increase the text size, the bullet point gets larger, but it doesn't seem to be at a proper ratio to blend with the text. It seems like it's a little bit on the small side, and I'd like to make it a little bigger. Is there some way of adjusting the image to make the bullet point larger and keep the text the same size?
What I would recommend you do, Joe, is insert your picture, insert a separate text box, align them so that the picture is the size you want and the text is the size you want, and then group them together. And then just copy the group, and you can edit and put a new picture in by ungrouping and then putting in a new picture if you want to edit the picture. So it's not something you're going to be able to do with the pre-formatted bulleted text capabilities, because it's going to keep the picture image the size that matches the text font. You're going to adjust the size of the image based on your font selection. So you have to keep them as two separate objects when you create them if you want to use an image. Another thing to look at doing is images, get compressed down. When I talk to people in my app class about designing icons for applications, if you look at your smartphone, those icons are pretty small. And so having an image that has a lot of complexity to it doesn't always scale down well when you make it small. And so sometimes it's a matter of image selection. But if you have just say 3 bullets or 4 bullets on a slide, and you want to just have images, the other way is to just put the images in there and put the text in there separately. And you can put the text in bullet points and put the images in, and then see what designer comes up with. It might do a nice arrangement for you and come up with a solution as well. But you might have to just keep them separate, not use the images as bullet points, but use them just as graphics that you maneuver around and position manually.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Carl.
So just a little question. If you have, say, 5 text boxes and you 5 text boxes and you put it in a slide, okay? And you group them. After you group them, can you go into each text box as the group? Can you go and edit each text box? Or do you have to ungroup them?
I believe you would have to ungroup them, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
Yeah, now, I mean, there's just a lot of graphics tools that you can apply, we didn't even cover animations. And you could actually do animations in PowerPoint and do video, record videos. Yeah, Carol.
I mean, I don't know, but my guess to Carl is, because I do still use LibreOffice. When you group things, you go into one of the 4 icons that says edit, and you can have to click on the little one part of that group that you want to edit, and you can. So I don't know if that applies to this, but
You might be able to. I haven't looked at editing too many things, excuse me, in groups to see whether they work that effectively or not in group, how group editing works in PowerPoint. There's just a lot of resources you can utilize to make it, but using diagrams, blocks of objects, and as opposed to just text, bullet point text is can help communicate points more effectively too. Designing good slides is a challenge. There's a book I read on death by PowerPoint. It's been around a while. Another one, I think there's another one, death by bullet point. Bullet points can get difficult when you're giving a presentation because people can read what you have on the screen. And sometimes communicating a point, you want to keep the attention on you as the presenter, not just what they're reading. And so people can read through a screen pretty fast if it's just text, but they may not understand what it is you're trying to communicate. So trying to use illustrations or graphics or diagrams or pictures, other things like that can help communicate the information in different ways and make it more effective, because creating and crafting a presentation to communicate something to somebody is a lot of work when you put it together. Showing how to use software is for me easy. Trying to put together a presentation that communicates ideas and concepts and thoughts takes a little bit of work.
Bob, I think you ought to try this one time. Let's say you got a complex diagram to explain technology. You showed us one before, but a real complex diagram. Like E.G. Sun once sent us a diagram that I fell off my chair, couldn't understand it at all. But so if you have a complex diagram and you build it by yourself while you're explaining, and you're building it piece by piece, in the 15, 20 minutes that you built it, probably gets the point across. You got to try that sometime.
Right. You can have a build, as opposed to showing people everything
right
once, building it up step by step makes it easier for people to see what's added on as opposed to something else. It's like going out and buying a car with, you get the stock car, and then of course they got all the options. You decide on the car you want. Oh, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this option added on? Oh, I really recommend you get this type of thing. Yeah, so it's all, but building things up step by step is really a good sequence. So it's not always about one slide. It's about a sequence of slides as well that you want to have if you got 10, 15 minutes to communicate a point, showing people how you can build upon things. Even with bullet points, you can create and add an animation that hides the bullets until you click on the mouse and then displays them one at a time so people don't read ahead also, which is pretty effective if that's what you deal with too.
There's a great, I guess you'd call it a comedy routine that this fella does. He's a speaker. I don't know if you've seen it. Are you familiar with the one I'm talking about, PowerPoint? Where he shows exactly how not to create a PowerPoint presentation.
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the chat.
Yeah,
chat
thanks.
I'll put it in the chat and people can take a look at it. But it's a stitch. It really is, because he does everything wrong.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just wild. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you.
See you soon.
Enjoy. Take care.
Take care.